Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. The local time is 9:45, and we will begin our program at 10 minutes after 10, not 10 o'clock. It's a quiz day, and Mason is holding court here with everybody in the room. They had a study group last night, and they're continuing right now. So I'm talking a little quieter than I normally do to allow those guys to chat a little bit. There's a nervous energy in the room. So you'll hear a little chitter chatter in the background. And are we functional here this morning? And where are you viewing from? You continue now. You continue. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, not that I would ever ask you what's exactly going to be on the quiz, but
Mason?
Do we have an inclination that we're going to have to draw the plates, like boundaries and the plates in real life on this quiz? Or do we feel like that might be something more for exam today?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't understand that answer.
Yes, it's going to be closer to exam.
All right, we are 5 by 5. Let me, where are you viewing from this morning? Novosibirsk, Russia. That's great. Novosibirsk. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is there. Terrific. Oh boy, scrolling too fast. Houston, Texas. Lori's in Oregon. Phoenix, Arizona. Good Lord, how many do we have here? Oh, we already have more than 300, I guess. That's why. I'm sorry, I can't keep up with it. I'm just grabbing them as they go by. La Grande, Oregon, Las Vegas, Nevada, Los Angeles, hello, Don, Brisbane, Australia, Finland, Cambridge, Ontario, Devon, UK, Darrington, Washington, Alaska, Finland, Vernon, British Columbia, Minnesota, Tacoma, Redmond, Oregon, Sweden, hello, Toulon, Pinehurst, North Carolina, Manitoba, Canada, Surrey, Canada. Oh yeah, we got a bunch of folks here early in the room. They are ready for action today. Andre is in Seattle. Bart's from the Tri-Cities, Washington. Kirk's from Silesia. The Selenian Block, I see what you're doing now. Bellevue, Ontario. Beaverton, Oregon. Devon, Elsie's in the UK. Snowball, Arkansas. Is that a real place? Garrett from the Netherlands. St. Louis, Missouri. Mason is now handing out candy to his classmates. He's throwing candy to his classmates. That was a Twix flying through the air in the cardinal direction. It's Old Home Week. Bryce is with us today. Former student Brian. Bryce just declared his major against his will. I could see the panic in his eyes. Sacramento, California, good morning. Alva, Oklahoma. Bijou. Bijou. Muffler Boy. What are we doing now? Oh, good Lord. Charles, knock it off. Scott says, I want a Reese's. Okay. Scott wants a Reese's. You got a Reese's?
I can go to the store to buy one.
I desperately want to put you on camera. I desperately.
I can send it being on camera if you're allowed to show us. I do have an abundant Snickers steak for Nick.
I don't know. Maybe I'll buy some Halloween masks, and you'll all get on camera with your Halloween masks on. Okay. We're amped, and Mason's handing out sugar. This is not going to go well this morning. All right, a few more from you here. Bavaria, Germany is listening. Hello, Claudia. Are you just listening? That's great. Maybe you're doing something else and you're just listening. Is Mason from New Orleans? No. Why would you say that? He's offended right now. What?
I avoid the South with a clay.
Oh God, I'm not going to repeat that. All right. Ed is from Indianapolis. God, there's nothing like a quiz morning to get some energy going in the room. My God. Yeah. Kentucky, hello. Woodstock, Georgia. So if you weren't with us before when I gave a quiz, I'll, it's not until 10 after the hour that I'm going to start talking about hotspots. So I have a little slideshow that I'll show you. It's about the best I can do for you. So, Santosh, hello from the Himalaya in India. I don't know if you've been with us for this. I remember you from last year. Great to see you again. Brian's in Duluth, Minnesota. Oak Harbor, Washington. Squim, Washington. Tom Brady. Charles. I'm glad that you're here today, Charles. I'm glad that you're here. Bay Area, California. Whoa. Calogero is watching from Elm, Switzerland? Are you really? That's, what's it look like? Oh, the room got quiet. Yeah, there's like, how many Zentners are still in town? Go to the nearest phone booth and look up Zentners. Just Calogero, you got 20 minutes. Head outside, walk up and down and say, I know Nick Zentner, and we'll see how many people come out and go, shut up. I'm trying to, what time is it there?
It's like 9 hours later. It's a lot.
Mason. That's really cool. If I read that correctly, you're watching from this little village up in the Swiss Alps where all my people are from. That's amazing. What up, homie? All right. Matthew's in Portland, Oregon. Crossville, Tennessee. Fort Worth, Texas. Saber is here. What? Are you pretending this whole time, Saber? Are you not really in Baja right now? Or is there a chance they have wireless in Baja? Pend Oreille County, that's where Mary is. Crooked River, Caldera. Charles. Vancouver, Washington. Port Deposit, Maryland. It's 7 p.m. in Switzerland. Okay. Prime time. Dick is from the Netherlands. Okay. I don't think I have any announcements or anything necessarily. You see our cute little outline for the day. I went into Vindman's Bakery yesterday to buy a loaf of bread, and somebody left a gift card. For a lot of money for me. So number one, thank you. Number two, I'm embarrassed that you did that. Number three, thank you. But we're kind of done with the gifts. There was a lot of gifts when I was doing things from home, and that's good. That's fine. We're not getting into the gift thing here. I'm working. So thank you, but I won't be doing much more gift stuff or acknowledgement or whatever. Richard's in Vienna, Austria. Hello, good evening. Can you hear Mason? Virgil is in Billings, Montana. Kevin in McKinleyville, California. It feels like there's something else I wanted to tell you. Oh, I guess I wanted to tell you that yesterday I was in here. The other camera has arrived. And I think I have a plan for how I'll use the second camera. I think I'm going to strap the second camera, the second webcam onto the document camera so that I think I'll be able to figure out how to switch webcams during the live stream. I haven't gotten there yet, but I think I know how to do it. And so you'll see a slideshow today where the laptop screen, is pretty small, but I think I might be able to figure out how when we go to the laptop screen, I'll be able to really give you a good look at the laptop screen just at the same time that these guys, because their view on the screen and your view will be identical. So that's the latest thing that I'm tinkering with. And if you've been with our scene for a while, you know that I like to do it all myself. I like to learn myself. I don't want to pawn it off on somebody else. And I know that if I get too deep into it, I'll just lose all my momentum. I'll just get overwhelmed. So I just do a little bit each time. Each time I sit down, I'm like, okay, I learned this and this and this, and that's good for today. Oh, the other thing I want to say is I'm getting more emails than ever. And if you've emailed me and you're not obviously I reply to all the students and all my day job emails. I do all that as promptly as I can. But if you're a little ticked off that I haven't replied to your email, I'm sorry. I just decided a while back I can't reply to every email. There's just too many coming in. So I just wanted to remind you that I read all the emails. I watch all the replays. I see all the comments, but I don't have the time to reply to all that stuff. Okay, you say sweep the room here, see what people have to say. I purposely have the mic on, hot mic, so that you can hear some of their voices. That's a decision on my part. And I'll show you the little dinky slideshow as soon as I get these guys going. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Professor Nick, I was going to say, that photo you showed us of the glacier in Switzerland?
Yes.
We actually had that exact same photo in my biology course because we were talking about climate change and its effect on speciation.
Same thing?
And extinction. The exact same photo.
Boy, I got to copyright what I'm doing. People are ripping me off. Professor
Lucy Botcher, if you want to take it.
Damn that Lucy. She's a neighbor of mine. I'm gonna go knock on her door.
So, I mean, these are all you can't use the same image I found from Google.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm gonna copyright a Google image
Right.
against other people.
You can't search the same stuff I search for. Jordan, you ready? Okay. I understand you were part of the study group last night. Little birdie told me. Both Emilys were in the study group. Little birdie told me. The bird had a lot to say. What can I say? Okay, you ready? Attaboy. Good.
Okay, silica content. Does it get higher or lower as well?
Oh, good Lord. The TA's at it again. Mason, the TA, is drilling these guys.
Okay, well, it helps me memorize it, and I'm sure.
Hey, Blake.
For example,
She's already done this. You can tell him to stop, Tawny. All right, but the same thing over and over again? You ready, Hunter? Okay. Well, I got your colors ready. You're going to give me a little treat. You're going to give me a little, at least give me 2 colors on the quiz today, all right? They'll just make my life a little more enjoyable. All right, Michaela. Oh, look at you. Different spot. I like it. Thank you. You ready for action?
Yeah, as ready as I can be.
Well, that's good. Oh, I haven't seen you in a while.
I've been on the lectures online. I got a little sniffle Monday and just made sure that I didn't spread it to anyone. So
All right.
I
Okay.
was 100% by the end of Monday, but
All right.
wait a couple
Very
of
good.
days,
Very
so.
good, Tim. Okay. You got a scone working here and a
Oh,
little
yeah.
cafe d'art.
Oh yeah.
Is that from campus?
No, from Weinigers.
Weinigers,
Oh heck yeah.
AKA Winigers, you outsider. I'm shaming you right now. I know. Okay. I got you. You'll totally blend in from this point on, Bryce. Weinigers.
So it looks like we're about to start it.
All right, no more candy throwing, Mason. We're about to start. Young man, give me that knife. Whoosh.
No, they start off as like 4 separate dimensions.
Okay, class, good morning. There's wonderful energy in the room, and I know why. Because we're taking care of quiz number 2. Let me remind you how we do this. It's closed book. All your notes are away. I give you quiz number 2. You roll through it in the next 10 minutes. When you are done, remember you put it face down in front of you and you zone out or you draw a nice little cartoon or whatever. At 10 minutes after, we collect them as a group, and I have the answers posted on the bulletin board outside of my office door, room 134. If you haven't found my office yet, you can go see the answers on your way out of town today, okay? Out of the classroom today. But I do have a lecture ready to go, and I'm excited to get started on hotspots at 10 minutes after the hour. So let's go ahead and take care of this, all right? Quiz number 2. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Thank you for being on time and ready for action. Thank you, Emily. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Bet. Are you our guest? What's your name again? Dan? Nice to meet you. I'm glad you found the room. Let's step out in the hallway quick. And you found a free place to park, I hope?
Yeah.
Okay.
I took your suggestion.
Good, good. Well, we can visit a little bit after class if you're interested. And you are certainly welcome to just kind of wander around the building. But I thought maybe it would just be best if you actually kind of saw the place and got a feel for it and decided if you really wanted to come here and you're going to have to commute. That was kind of the idea.
I was talking to, I know someone in Cleveland,
Uh-huh.
and she's going to put me up for 2 nights. So
Oh.
I'll only have to travel 2 days.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a
Cuts
nice
down
solution.
400 miles versus the
Yeah.
1,000 I was planning on.
Exactly. But you're still not sure, UW or here.
I can tell you just the walk here.
Yeah.
Here.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll let the place sell itself, but that's good. Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm glad you made it today. Hope you feel comfortable. Yep. Sorry, forgot about you. I think one more minute ought to do it. One more minute. Okay, I think that's a fair amount of time. Make sure your name is on your paper, please. Pass it all the way to the left, all the way to the south. I'll collect them down here in the aisle. To your left, all the way down. Thank you. We'll start our lecture on hotspots in 1 minute. Thank you.
Nearly forgot my name.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. Okay, everybody. Let's go ahead. Let's get our notebooks out. Let's get right back into it. We've got a good thing happening here. I know you want to chit-chat about how you did, et cetera, et cetera. Let's put that off, okay? So down the hall, the answers will be, they are posted right now, the answers to quiz number 2. So you can check how you did. Mason, you can check how you did on the way out the building today. And I'll post your scores out of 14 points on Canvas by tonight. And we just continue. Our midterm exam will be after Valentine's Day. So it'll be a while before our midterm. But this was a check-in to make sure that we're feeling comfortable with the material. And if you studied a bunch of stuff that did not show up on the quiz today, that was not pointless work, that will be showing up on the midterm more than a week from now. Okay? So today we transition. We transition from plate tectonics to volcanoes. And tomorrow is Friday. I'll be seeing you all tomorrow and Monday, and those are 2 volcano lectures, global volcanoes. And then the next 4 lectures will be earthquakes, kind of tied specifically to Washington. So we're leaving the basics of plate tectonics, but we need to talk about these things called hotspots before we do. You've had ample opportunity to get this outline down, and there's not much of an outline anyway. And so let's go ahead. Message number 1. Plate boundaries were very helpful to us, but they don't explain everything. So I wanted to do this because from talking to a few of you, I think there is still a little bit of confusion on how to deal with these terms. So most of this is familiar. There's one brand new term, strike slip, that I'm adding to you right now. Now, avoid the fact you're going to go to sleep right now and that you're mentally fried from the quiz. It wasn't that hard, number 1. And number 2, let's try to get right into it. So these are our 3 major plate boundary types. Divergent, these are the plates going away from each other. Convergent, the plates going away. Transform, the plates, convergent, colliding, and then transform, remember, were 2 tectonic plates scraping past each other in the 3rd dimension. So this is a block that's going into the chalkboard, and this is one coming out. We actually have symbols for that, by the way. It's kind of cute. This is the point of the arrow coming out at you, and this is the feather of the arrow as it goes away from you. So, audience participation time. Where can I go to visit one of these divergent plate boundaries? Iceland. Where can I go to find one of these convergent plate boundaries? Himalayas. We had all sorts of choices, right? I just am drawing a general convergent plate boundary. And what's the famous example here? San Andreas Fault. What's new, or maybe slightly new to you, is that our talk of faults are smaller scale features. So I've done this with you, but I want to make sure it's clear. Normal faults are small scale cracks that are popping up very close to a plate boundary. And so yes, we associate normal faults, like Iceland, with a plate boundary type divergent. And yes, we're going to find reverse faults on a small scale as we get closer and closer to an actual plate boundary. So I'm saying that reverse and convergent, not the same thing. They're related, but you can see graphically now, maybe for the first time, how those work together. What's new is that our transform plate boundary, which is a significant plate boundary, by the way, how deep are these boundaries? How deep does a plate boundary go? How many kilometers? More. 100. These are plates, remember. These are tectonic plates that we're talking about. And plates are 100 kilometers thick, right? A distinct block of the lithosphere. So you can think of it by depth. Divergent, convergent, transform, those are plate boundaries that go 100 kilometers down and are truly separating two distinct blocks of the lithosphere. Whereas these smaller faults, those are the ones that only go down 15. Remember the cold big hunk versus the warm big hunk, the brittle versus ductile. You got it now. So what's new is that strike-slip faults, we're not going to talk about them much in this class, but I want it to be complete here. Strike-slip faults are found on either side of the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault is the major plate boundary. But smaller strike-slip faults like the Hayward Fault, there's tons of them, Garlock Fault, all sorts of them are related to that. Are we clear? That's a minor point, but I wanted to make sure we had it graphically. Okay, chalkboard time, because the first message is we do have volcanoes that are not at plate boundaries. And how do we explain them? How do we explain major geologic action not at a plate boundary? Most volcanoes, most earthquakes are at plate boundaries, but not all. And so that's where this concept of a hotspot becomes very important. So I want to do some sketch time with you. And I've also got some professional diagrams to share with you as well. Ready? Pacific Ocean. Tim, pop up. Where's the Pacific Ocean? Thank God you're back, Tim. You're feeling 100%. Pacific Ocean. Big old ocean. Is there Hawaii on that? Yes. Now, according to page 19, that's good, Tim, thank you. According to page 19, pretty much the entire Pacific plate is underneath the waters of the Pacific Ocean. So let's do this. This is the Pacific Ocean. I don't like that. That's going to be confusing based on what I'm going to do. Okay, so we're going to draw this together. This is the Pacific Ocean. So North America's over here. Asia's over here. Alaska is up here. And we learned about the Ring of Fire. We learned that there is a major trench system rimming much of the Pacific Ocean. And even though the East Pacific Rise is spreading like crazy, making new ocean crust in the Pacific Ocean faster than the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, we learned last time that there is massive destruction, lots of subduction of the ocean crust all around the rim of the Pacific Ocean, and therefore we have this ring of fire, this concept of volcanoes going all the way around the margin of the Pacific. So what the hell's going on out here? Almost smack dab in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is an island. It's called the Big Island of Hawaii. Now you got a couple pages in the yellow book, and I don't know if I'm going to refer to them a whole lot specifically, but you can look ahead on 22 and 23 to kind of see where we're headed if you haven't already. But this concept of tectonic plates and tectonic plate boundaries doesn't really work with Hawaii. And yet, one of our most active volcanoes in the world is in the middle of a tectonic plate. Do you want to do it? Let's go ahead. I wasn't planning on this, but let's do it. What's this over here? This is a divergent plate boundary. It's called the East Pacific Rise. It's creating basalt. It's creating the Pacific plate in one direction, and it's creating, let's not even worry about the name of it, some other ocean plates heading the other way. So underneath the Pacific Ocean on this map is one tectonic plate, the Pacific plate, and it's moving, you've committed to memory, it's moving to the northwest. I mean, it's one continuous, huge Pacific Ocean plate. And yet, in the middle of it, not even close to a plate boundary, we have volcanoes. Okay, Devante's not into it, but let's see if we can get him in. A hotspot, a geologic hotspot, is beneath the Big Island of Hawaii. There's a place called Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. It's erupting right now. The summit of Kilauea volcano is erupting this morning. And it's being fueled by a geologic hotspot. Now here's what we know about hotspots, and let's make a list of what we don't know. You ready? There's about 24 of these hotspots worldwide. This is one of them. We're talking about the Hawaiian hotspot. I'm going to give it to you verbally, and then we'll do some more drawing in a second. So there's a couple of dozen, 24-ish, geologic hotspots around the world, and they're just like they sound. It's a spot that's effing hot. So we know that inside of the Earth, it's extremely hot. Down at the solid inner core or the liquid outer core, it's extremely hot. And as we get towards the surface of the Earth, it's cooler. But there's this concept of escaping heat from the interior of the planet. And so you can measure, as a geophysicist, you can measure heat flow. How much is the heat kind of getting out of the Earth at any particular spot? Well, in the continents, where the crust is how thick? In the continents where the crust is how thick? Hello, is this thing on? In the continents where the crust is how thick? I know you took a quiz. Come on. How thick is continental crust? No. Thank you. Depth to the moho. Crust versus mantle. Continental crust is 70 kilometers thick. That's the answer. Where we have continents where the crust is 70 kilometers thick, it's difficult for that heat to get out of the Earth. There is low heat flow coming to the surface of the Earth where we have continents. Think of it like insulation in your attic. If there's a lot of thick pink Owens Corning, Pink Panther insulation in your attic, you're preventing heat from going up through your roof. But if you're not in the continents, if you're in the oceans, I'm not even going to come to you, I was so disappointed, where the crust is 5 kilometers thick, there's a lot of heat escaping. But even that is small compared to these hotspots. These hotspots are these 25 places where there's a crazy amount of heat coming out of the Earth. High heat flow at hotspots. Number 2, they are fixed. They are not moving. And this is major message news. This is major stuff. I'm rattled. You didn't know that answer. See if I can recover myself. We don't know why these hotspots exist. I mean, there's people in the live chat right now that have all the answers, but even they don't know why these hotspots exist. There are ideas, but it's one of the major mysteries that remain with our planet. Why do these 25 hotspots exist where they do? Here, we have one of these stationary, high heat flow hotspots in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There's another one in the middle of the Rocky Mountains at a place called Yellowstone National Park. You've heard of Yellowstone. That's where it's a national park, and there's a bunch of bears and bison, and there's hot water, and there's geysers, Old Faithful it's called. It's a weird place. It's a weird place because there's one of these geologic hotspots beneath Yellowstone in Wyoming, in addition to the Big Island of Hawaii in the Pacific Ocean. There's another one. I'm giving you examples. They're from your outline. There's another one of these mysterious hotspots at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and that's why Iceland is taller than the rest of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So you can't say the hotspots are only in the oceans. You can't say they're only in continents. You can't say they're only at plate boundaries, because those three examples are completely different situations. People have spent a lot of time thinking about and studying these hotspots. Nobody has a convincing answer. It appears that God had 25 darts and a dartboard and was throwing darts at the wall. It's a random occurrence. And I'll say it, some like the idea of a meteorite striking the earth, wounding the crust, and creating a hot spot. It's an idea, difficult to prove. And lots of other ideas as well. So let's get out in the open right now. We don't know why these hotspots are there, but we are sure they are a thing, and we know how to recognize them by looking at this pattern. Devante. No, I don't have an idea. Here we go. So today the hotspot is beneath the Big Island of Hawaii, but here's where it's amazing. And here's how we came up with this idea that we do have a stationary geologic hotspot. Trailing away from the Big Island of Hawaii are other islands. So, have you been to Hawaii? There's more than one island. The biggest one is in the southeast, but the islands get smaller and smaller as you go to the northwest. So that was a long, I'm playing with how I present this, by the way. It's a little rough. I used to start with the field observations Hawaii and then eventually get to a hotspot. We're doing the opposite. I talked about hotspots to start with, and now I'm going to the field observations. Can you get these down, please? There's more than one island. There's 8 of them in the Hawaiian Islands. Here's what we know about those 8 islands. They get smaller as you go to the northwest. They get shorter as you go to the northwest. Are you writing this down? Are you awake? Are you conscious? What's wrong with you today? I wish I never had to give quizzes and tests. It just screws things up, screws up the energy in the room. Okay, so people forever were wondering about that. People, explorers of the islands, native populations, they knew about these islands and that they were all kind of lined up and they got smaller and shorter as you go to the northwest. Oh my God. But then we started making bathymetric maps. You remember Marie Tharp? And we discovered a whole bunch more underwater. It's not just these 8 islands out there by themselves. And that's what page 20 something tells you and shows you. Let's go ahead and look at it. On page 22, we not only have the 8 islands, you've got it, so I'm not going to show it to you, but I'm showing it to the home audience. So we have our 8 Hawaiian islands that are islands. They're truly islands. They're pieces of land you can build a house on. But then, did you know this? Continuing underwater, there's a continuation of those mountains, essentially, that go all the way to Russia. They go all the way along the Pacific Ocean floor. And we call those seamounts. So we know what islands are, but if you are a mountain that's not an island, but it's a seamount, meaning you're totally submerged, we have way more seamounts in this Hawaiian chain than we do islands. Well, that's weird, and it gets weirder. There's a big old dog leg. There's a big old kink in this trail of these seamounts. What the hell is going on? Sorry, Patrick. What the hell is going on out here in the Pacific? The answer is a stationary hotspot and a moving ocean floor. Can you picture how that would work? Before we go there, let's add more data. We know the trend, we know the elevation, we know the size, we know that we have this line. It gets better than that. Now geologists 50, 60, 70 years ago say, well, let's figure out the age. Let's figure out the age of each island. Can we do that using absolute age dating? We can. What kind of rock in every one of those seamounts, in every one of those islands? What's the answer? Basalt, correct. So the age of the basalts on page 22 are there for you in black and white, and there is an age progression. The islands are not the same age. There's a pattern to the ages. And as you can plainly see, the islands and seamounts get older and older and older and older and older, all the way back to 70 million years ago. Isn't this wild? So this is some sort of island-making factory where we only make one island at a time, and there's only one active island at a time. The only active, meaning the only island that actually erupts lava, is the one that's sitting on top of the hotspot today. But now I hope your brain is really working if you've never thought of this before. And I hope that you're starting to see that every one of these older islands and seamounts was created when it was on its hotspot. And that it's the moving Pacific Ocean floor. That's the only thing that's going on. It's the last thing I'll do, and then Mason and others have questions, and that's wonderful. So make a stationary hotspot. You see this? I'm not going to move it. I got heat coming out of my fist, dog. Okay? I'm not going to move my blowtorch. It's going to be stationary. But now I'm going to take the Pacific plate, and I'm going to put it on top of the hotspot, and I'm going to make a basaltic island out in the middle of the Pacific by doing that. I'm going to burn a hole with my hot fist right through this whiteboard, Pacific plate. But now I'll start over here. But now if I move the Pacific plate, I'm going to make another basalt mountain. And in this process, I'm going to kill the one that I just moved off of my hot fist. If I keep moving the Pacific Ocean floor, I'm going to keep making volcanoes one at a time, and only one can erupt at a time. These guys are all yesterday's news. Mason.
Okay, so I was going to say that I sort of got that. So we have
Quickly.
a hot spot, creates a volcano, plating volcano on the island. So why do we have to really U-shaped hot spot down?
Let's get there. Let's elaborate on this concept, and then we'll get to a couple of exceptions. Mason's asking about the bend. I don't blame him, but that's not where we are at the moment. Thank you, though. I'll get there. So, page 23. This is me with my little Sharpie pen long ago. I maybe exaggerated the individual islands too much. It's more of a continuous ridge with irregular tops. So I'm a little too cartoonish here, showing these individual true islands with very low elevations in between. It's kind of exaggerated. But you have the concept, I think, that it's no accident that the Pacific plate moves northwest over the stationary Hawaiian hotspot, and sure enough, here we have our island chain going to the northwest. And if we go back in time, we can get each of these guys back to its former glory. Page 20, whatever, also shows that when you are on the hotspot, you have elevation above sea level. You've built off the ocean floor, and you are tall enough to be above sea level, more than 10,000 feet above sea level, I might add, the Big Island of Hawaii. There's summits like Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa that are more than 12,000 feet above sea level in Hawaii. There's snow on it. But you can see that if we move that 12,000 foot basalt island, which is actively erupting, off of the hotspot, what happens? We remove the magma supply. Therefore, we lower the elevation. We physically erode that island and erode that island and erode that island until it becomes a seamount. So the future of the Big Island of Hawaii is a seamount. In fact, every one of these seamounts used to look exactly like the Big Island of Hawaii back in the day. This is beautiful, simple logic. More questions. We'll get to the kink in just a second. Anybody else? Yes, Devontae. Well, if we go roughly about 6 million years between when you are a big volcano on top of the hotspot to when you finally go down below the waves and become a seamount. And you can look at that by looking at those ages, the age progression just with the 8 Highlanders Hawaii. Thank you for the question. Yes?
What causes the irregular tops if it's moving at a continuous rate?
Yeah, I mentioned it's a little exaggerated. It's not exaggerated that much, but there is an irregular top, and it's difficult to explain that. I don't think there is evidence of herky-jerky motion of the Pacific Plate. People tend to want to go to that when they see that cartoon. So I don't have a good answer for you.
The part that gets me is just like how there's different parts where it seems like a volcano is made.
Right, right,
What would cause it to come out of those certain points?
right. Tawny?
So in the future, will there be like a new, quote, big island of Hawaii?
Yes. Tawny says, in the future, will there be a new Big Island of Hawaii? And the answer is yes. In fact, it's already on its way up. I haven't drawn it on these, but there is off the coast, my God, Lord, this is like some sort of parlor game. Off to the southeast of the Big Island of Hawaii is Loihi. It's a seamount, but it's different than the other seamounts because it's already on its way up. It's taller than, thank you, Devontae. It's taller than 12,000 feet off the ocean floor or something. Kind of forget. So it's already on the way up. And yes, the Big Island of Hawaii is on its way off right now of this rather large hotspot. And in fact, it's just the southeastern portion of the Big Island that's still erupting lavas. Thanks for that question. What can we say about the kink or about the bend that Mason wanted to ask about? Let's all look at it together. What can you say about the history of the movement of the Pacific Plate according to the dates you have on page 22? Who wants to say? Something happened 43 million years ago on page 22. What do you got, Mason?
It looks like it went from going north to the northwest that we see now.
That's exactly correct. Good job. So the Pacific Plate suddenly changed its direction. Again, the way we view this is the hotspots are not moving. And so if we have a clear linear trend and then a different linear trend, we can say something about the history of the Pacific Plate. For our notes, we don't know why, by the way, 43 million years ago, the Pacific Plate suddenly started moving northwest, whereas earlier than 43 million years ago, it was moving almost true north. I'll state it again, and then I think we need an animation because I'm guessing some don't still quite see how this works with a moving plate over a stationary hotspot. Here it is again. Between 70 and 43 million years ago, the Pacific Plate moved almost straight north over the stationary Hawaiian hotspot. And then suddenly, more or less, 43 million years ago, the Pacific Plate started moving northwest instead of north. And you're like, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, how else do you explain this trend of the seamounts? And you're like, well, is there other places in the Pacific Ocean floor where that change in the Pacific Plate is documented? The answer is hell yes. All right, so I guess I'm fragile this morning. The fact that you struggled with the depth of the continental crust, I'm still thinking about that. So that's me. I need to move on. We will get to Yellowstone, but it's really the Hawaiian system that is going to help us really make sure we can see how these hotspots operate. And like many things here, we're going to continue to use concepts today for the rest of the class. So what are we looking at here? Not a hotspot. We're just looking at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. I had a new pointer. Ticonderoga pointer, man. So you can see where there is a hot spot in association. Sorry. We can see that the Iceland is a divergent plate boundary also with a hot spot. But we're not talking about that right now. We're not talking about that right now. We're not talking about this right now. That seafloor spreading. It's tempting to think that Hawaii is like this, right? It's not what we're saying. There's no plate boundary at all. Today's topic has nothing to do with plate boundaries. Nothing to do with plate boundaries. Get this out of my face. Get it out of my face, please. No. I didn't show you this one. Continent versus continent, convergent plate boundary. In fact, if you look carefully, this is the Himalayas. This is the continent of India colliding with Eurasia. And you'll notice before the two continents start kissing, there's actually some ocean crust that we need to get out of there. So that's a more advanced thought, that we're going to actually change the type of convergent plate boundary before and after we remove all the ocean crust. Again, not our topic today, but I wanted to get us back to thinking about plate boundaries. Even this. Now, this is the right ocean. This is the Pacific. We do have a line of volcanoes. What island chain is this? The Aleutians. Thank you for participating. That's not a hot spot. This is where the oceanic Pacific plate is subducting beneath North America, and we either have the inner Aleutians with convergent ocean subducting beneath continent, or outer Aleutians, late last time, convergent ocean subducting beneath ocean. Not our topic. This is our topic. We're out in the middle of a single plate. And if we look underwater, we can see the bathymetry and see the continuation of that ridge. Here's Luihi on its way up, Tawny. Now, these whole incredible piles of basaltic lava are due to the hotspot. It's not seafloor spreading. I think we have that now. And here's our map of the Pacific Ocean. There's where the Hawaiian hotspot is. And here's our chain of seamounts. 43 million years ago, changed the trend. And then these seamounts disappear into that oceanic trench off the coast of Russia. So we probably had more than 70 million years worth of seamount creation. Shout out the questions when you got them. Devante. Seamounts are totally underwater. Tawny.
So you said that you can see all the seamounts going all the way back to Russia. So in the future, do you think that this hotspot, since it's still in that one place,
Yeah.
do you think that it would collide with like South America or North America?
You're thinking way down the road, and that's beautiful. Here's our map, our only map to show global hotspots. Be nice if I could get this other camera figured out. Every red dot is a hotspot. Our plate motions, our plate boundaries are the black lines, and Tawny's thinking way down the road, and like, is North America eventually going to run over the top of the Hawaiian hotspot? That's pretty much what you're asking, right? And the answer is yes. And if there's a hotspot beneath North America today, Yellowstone, this is an advanced thought now, is it possible the Yellowstone hotspot used to be out in an ocean and that North America has eventually crossed it? The answer is yes. Mason?
So does that mean that, I'm not sure if you could even answer this, the hotspots were there then when GEOL was still a thing 250 million years ago?
It's difficult to, it's hard to say how long the hotspots have been with us for a number of reasons. We'll maybe leave it at that right now. Devante is on fire this morning. Thanks for coming to class today, by the way. What do you got? No evidence of that. Do hotspots ever die? Devante wonders. No evidence of that. It's possible. No obvious place to point our finger and say this is what happened here. Eve. It's possible. Yeah. It's not a dumb question, and you're not missing something. We don't know. It's very difficult to, well, first of all, it's rare to have evidence of an obvious change of a plate. So that's kind of where we are, just documenting that this is a thing. And now you get into, remember, we're not even sure, you're asking me, we're not even sure we know what drives the plates. So how are we supposed to explain why a plate is suddenly changing its direction? Very difficult. This is what I wanted to get to, which is a nice animation. Is it Alex? No, he's not responding to his name. So this is more true to what the Hawaiian hotspot is doing. You can see kind of a continual buildup of basalt in this ridge-like manner. Notice that the hotspot is stationary. I hope it's clear to you, but I'll say it just in case it's not. The hotspot heat source has to be deeper than 100 kilometers depth, right? Why? Why do we know that? If the hotspot had a heat source that was shallower, oh, here we go with the bend, Mason. They might not use 43, by the way. Let's watch this for a second. 43, yeah, they like 43 too. Is that what you kind of had in mind? Eve's bothered why it's changing. We don't know. We're bothered too. But back to the point, let me go back. Back to the point. The heat source has to be deeper than 100 kilometers because the heat source is not moving. If the heat source was being generated, let's say 70, 80 kilometers deep within the plate, it would move with the plate. Can you see that now? Right. So the hotspot source, we know, has to be deeper than the lithosphere. It has to be in the asthenosphere, the mantle. Is this coming directly from the core? We don't know that much about the Earth interior. It's difficult to say. Now, I jump right to this. And I want you to notice this is on a loop. I want you to notice what's similar and what's different. What's similar here to what I was just showing you before? Correct. This is a moving plate over a stationary hotspot. Looks a little different, but that's the same, right? It's a stationary plate it's a stationary hotspot with a plate moving over the top. It's a whiteboard going over my hot fist. But what's different? The volcano that is created from this situation is completely different. Where's the pile of basalt? We don't have it. Where's the seamount? We don't have it. Why not? This is a continent moving over a hotspot, not an ocean crust moving over a hotspot. So this is a totally different kind of a volcano, a much more explosive, deadly kind of a volcano. And this is where we're transitioning to tomorrow. This is what it looks like at Yellowstone National Park. And I got 2 minutes. There's what Yellowstone looks like. How many people have been to Yellowstone? Anybody? Oh, God, most of you. Wow. Okay. What do I want to do before we quit? Oh, yeah. Where's Yellowstone on this map? What state? Wyoming. Where's Wyoming? That's not Wyoming. That's us, right? Okay. Idaho, Montana. Oh, shit, man. That's Wyoming right here. Sorry, Patrick. And I'm going to put a circle, which is what the Yellowstone volcano looks like today. I can't even see if you're on this frickin'. You can see. Good. I might need an extra minute. To this point in class, we decided that the North American plate moves straight west. You've committed that to memory. North American plate goes west. We're going to tweak it just a touch right now. Because this is a stationary hotspot beneath Yellowstone, and we know where the Yellowstone hotspot used to be in the past. And look at the trend of these places where the old Yellowstone volcanoes used to be. Do you know what I'm doing? This is just like Hawaii, right? We had a trail of seamounts with a stationary hotspot and a moving plate. I'm doing the same here, but I'm not drawing seamounts. I'm drawing continental volcanoes, which we'll need 2 lectures to talk about. But I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to tell you right now, from this point forward, that's a big fat arrow, by the way. It's not a penis. This is North America, the North American plate, moving southwest over the stationary Yellowstone hotspot. Not a penis, stationary mantle plume or hotspot with North America dragging over it to the southwest. So these volcanoes are getting older and older and older away from Yellowstone, just like the Hawaiian Islands got older and older and older to the northwest away from the Hawaiian hotspot. So I know you have questions about this, but I'm cutting us now because we will keep revisiting this. There are major effects throughout the Pacific Northwest and Washington geology from this Yellowstone hotspot story, but you've been introduced at least to the idea. Thank you for coming. Answer key in the hallway. I love you. Goodbye. And home viewer, if you want to read all you can possibly read about hotspots, there's a so oftentimes in geology, hotspots are called mantle plumes, a plume of heat coming from the mantle. And there's a website run by Vic Camp and maybe Steve Rydell and others, I'm not sure. Somebody might have to help in the live chat. I forgot to look it up. Bye-bye, thank you. Mantle, maybe it's... Can somebody correct me? Is it mantleplumes.org? I don't think it's .com. And we'll see if we can get people to that. But that's an excellent website with a lot of scientific work on there. I'll be right with you. Mason wants to chat and talk about candy. No, you don't.
Another quick question.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, does that mean that it might be more often than we think that the plates are changing direction? Because if we just straight up lose the Hawaii plates as they're getting subducted, and eventually we will lose that entire trail that shows the direction change.
Correct.
From going from north to northwest.
Right.
So does that mean that it could have happened numerous times that
Oh,
we
yeah.
just don't know of?
Exactly.
Okay.
Welcome to geology, where we have hardly anything left to work with. The evidence is mostly destroyed.
Yeah, and then I was like, I'm sorry I said 70. I had a brain fart. I was thinking
You're okay. You're
of,
okay. No, everybody was struggling with that for whatever reason. I was just shocked. You're fine.
And then I don't want to go check your door because I'm really lazy. For the Himalayas.
Go check my door. Go check my door. Dan, I'll be with you in a sec. Feel free to wander around the building if you like, but I'll see you in my office in a few minutes. I'm just going to talk to these live viewers for a second. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, a few questions. I've got a visitor from out of town who's thinking about coming to school here, and I will be spending a little time with him. ORG. I just assume everybody's kind of corrected each other. I should have looked that up, sorry. So uppercase, and I'll try to answer a few hotspot questions, even though there are significant questions that remain, as you well know. Terry, was Smith Rock Caldera created by the Yellowstone hotspot? It seems too far north for it to be. We will have a lecture on this, Terry, but the short answer is yes. I purposely didn't give ages here for these guys, but we will eventually. And there's something called, this is a sneak peek ahead, there's something called clockwise rotation of the crust, Terry. And if we undo that clockwise rotation of the crust, stuff that's now in Oregon used to be down here on trend with this hotspot track. So it's becoming well known among many that the Yellowstone hotspot is responsible for a lot of things that until recently we didn't realize it was connected to. Oh boy, lots of questions. Of course, it's an interesting topic. I'll scroll back here a little bit, look at some uppercase. Please further explain each Hawaiian island sinking to a seamount. It's kind of similar to what I was mentioning with the Iceland story. When you get off of a heat source, whether it's a spreading center or whether it's a geologic hotspot, you're going to cool and contract the crust, And so I visualize the ocean floor simply sinking as it gets away from the hotspot, because we're taking the thickness. Just take ocean crust when it's on the heat source, on the hotspot in Hawaii. It's thermally expanded. It's heated and it gets thicker because it's expanded. And I think most think that when you move the ocean floor off of the heat source, you're going to cool it and contract it, and therefore you're removing elevation of the ocean floor. And then there's also just physical weathering from storms and everything else, just physical battering of those islands. They just can't stay islands forever because all the storm energy over the course of 6 million years. How old is the oldest known Yellowstone supereruption? Yeah, Ronnie, 55 million years. I'll have to explain a little bit later in this class. I guess you'll have to stick with us. Silesia is now most tie it to the Yellowstone hotspot. Clint, please clarify for everyone which layer is 50 kilometers and which is 70 kilometers, and what is the difference? I don't know what 15 is. These are past lectures. I'm just reviewing these guys. You might have to go back to past lectures. I don't think I'll go back and recap stuff I've already talked about here. Thank you, though. Any possible likely change to the Pacific Plate boundary type that triggered direction change? A lot of people have looked at that change 43 million years ago. Some connect it to the collision between India and Asia to begin the Himalayas. I don't know that timing very well, but I've heard that some like that a major continent versus continent collision 43 million years ago is beginning in northern India. And is it a coincidence that's when the Pacific Plate changes its direction? But that's not conventional wisdom by any means. Do all plates have hot spots? Well, there's small plates like the Juan de Fuca plate that I don't think has a hot spot underneath it, but there is a hot spot at the Juan de Fuca ridge. In other words, at the plate boundary between the Juan de Fuca plate and the Pacific Plate, there's something called, I think it's called is it the Cobb hot spot? Like the axial volcano. If you Google axial volcano, that's a hot spot pretty close to, well, it's at the boundary. So most, I guess I can't think of all. I don't know. I haven't been to mantleplumes.org that often. We might have some experts in here. I'm sure we do. A few more. A lot asking about 43. I've said all I can say. It's a mystery. Why is the latest Hawaiian island the biggest? Did the others erode away to a seamount? Yes, that was one of the main points of the meeting. Were the seamounts northwest of Hawaii ever above? Yes, that was the main point of the meeting. Already talked about it. Lori, does the geochemistry of Yellowstone match the Crooked River caldera? Yes. I don't know much about isotope geochemistry, but there has been some work recently done on the Crooked River caldera welded tuffs, looking at them isotopically, finding certain isotopes of helium that appear to be a smoking gun for a mantle plume source. Now I run out of information right after that. But instead of just kind of field mapping relations and clockwise rotation and GPS and other things, there's now an emerging geochemistry story to also convincingly tie some of these calderas in Oregon with the original track of the Yellowstone hotspot. I'm not making any of this up now. You know what I do. I try to read science papers the best I can, email some of those folks, and then report back to you. And if it's a harebrained idea, I try to present it as that. If it's an area I really like, but it's not a conventional story, I try to report it like that. There's been a flurry of papers recently that support this, even though I've been talking about the Yellowstone hotspot history going back to Silesia time for a while, mainly because I've been getting the inside scoop from some of the Oregon people. How do seamounts erode underwater? I don't think they do. I don't know about submarine geology processes very well, but as I visualize it, a seamount is like a lopped off, like you erode, tried to show it here. You know, you take this shield volcano, I drew it like a cone by mistake. You take that shield volcano and you reduce it, you get it below wave base, whatever that means. And then it's still a seamount because there's nothing more available to erode it. We've done the thermal contraction. We've done the physical erosion of the island. We've gotten it down below wave base, and then it just sticks as an old dead seamount, like a tree stump. But it doesn't continue to erode down to nothing, and that's why we have all that parade of seamounts all the way to Russia. Kent's talking about a volcano I don't know anything about. Why discrete eruptions of the mantle? Ian, I don't follow you there. Robert, is thermal management also the reason that the ground rises after iceberg gets off? I don't follow that one either. I don't tie thermal management to icebergs, but that's such a smaller scale thing. This is a pretty big story here. Sorry if I'm not understanding your questions correctly. I tried to answer most of these during the lecture. It feels like you don't believe me that we don't know. We honestly don't know. 3 more and I got to go. Jim, are ocean crusts compressed by weight of the water as the land is by glacial ice? Well, that's more of a physics question. That's an interesting thought. I've never had that thought. I don't know. I'm sure it's quite easy to calculate the weight of a column of seawater. Never had that thought. I don't really know how that would factor into this discussion necessarily, except you're saying that's what contributes to forming a seamount, that you're just, that doesn't seem like a driver though. I don't know the answer. Were hotspots stronger when they were younger? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm trying to come up with a way to kind of summarize how it's difficult to answer fundamental questions about features that we don't understand. I will come at it this way. You know, I've commented in the past. This will be the last question. I'm sorry if I didn't get to yours. This will be the last comment. I'm interested to a degree in the history of science and how scientists are they fall prey to fashions just like everyone else. What's the fashion of the day? What's the thought of the moment? What are all my other geologists thinking is accepted right now? So okay, well that's what I'll say too. It's human nature kind of stuff. And so we all know the history of science and the history of geology. We know that people with ideas that are against the grain are initially scorned and ridiculed, quite often publicly, because it doesn't go along with the fashionable thoughts of the day. You know what I'm talking about. Where was I going with this? Oh, yes. So this was one of the easiest ways, 50 years ago, this was one of the easiest ways to demonstrate the power of this newfangled thing 50 years ago called plate tectonics. And a mantle plume and the Hawaiian hotspot quite often was the centerpiece discussion to prove how you could take all these observations that have been made for countless generations of seafaring people or whatever, and come up with a model where you have a heat source and a moving plate, and we didn't know about these plates, and now we can explain why all these islands are out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Everybody goes home happy. Well, about 20 years ago, I guess almost 30 years ago now, there were some geophysicists that were saying, we're getting some results from the mantle that say that hotspots don't exist. And I did my master's thesis on the Yellowstone hotspot, and I remember going to a talk by Gene Humphreys from University of Oregon, and he's a geophysicist. He's like, hey, Yellowstone hotspot, that's not a thing. I'm like, what? And so for a time, it became fashionable, I think even down to my level, teaching my class, going, well, hotspots, if they really exist, because, for 15 years, it felt like science papers were saying we don't see the signature in the mantle for this high heat flow. Well, now the pendulum has swung back, and now there's been a new round of papers from seismic tomographers to say that they do, in fact, see a mantle plume. So now those that are following some of the literature, at least cursorily, are agreeing that it's a thing. So the key is to keep your mind open, possibly keep going to the papers and the data and look carefully at the data if you're able to understand the data, and not just kind of hear the talking points of the day, which always feels like a kind of a thing that constantly moves in the water, even among scientists, even among geologists, is my point. So will there be some significant breakthroughs on why mantle plumes, why hotspots exist? Will there be a major advance on what happened 43 million years ago worldwide to explain this sudden change in the direction of the Pacific Plate? I sure as hell hope so. That's why this stuff's still really fun and exciting, and why you go to conferences or why you read papers by young, bright people with all sorts of energy and intellect and new tools that we didn't have a generation ago. Okay. I got to go. A toast to you. Here's to you and your health in February of 2021. Sunheit, here's to you. Here's to all of us continuing to manage the best we can, coming up on a year of this. And there's a chance I'll have a 2-camera setup tomorrow morning. No promises, but maybe I'll make a breakthrough or two on my own and figure out how to switch back and forth. And we'll see if that changes things for the better here. Thank you for joining us. I love you. And goodbye. Goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA. See you tomorrow morning.